predictions uttered through the tongue of Michael de Nostradame, more commonly known to us as Nostradamus, have proven him to be one of the greatest and most extraordinarily accurate prophets the world has ever seen. Over 400 years ago, in a dark and secret room, studying forbidden books on the occult, using his knowledge of astrology, the celestial science, and an unexplained gift of foresight which came from within him, he saw visions of the future. Visions which told of the Great Fire of London, the Second World War, and the now imminent end of the world, as he saw it. When? Is he right? Listen and heed the words of Nostradamus.
Near the harbor and in two cities will be two scourges, the like of which have never before been seen. Hunger, plague, people crying for help from the great immortal God.
This extract from Nostradamus' writings describes the devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the first atomic bomb, and serves as a warning to mankind. For Nostradamus has prophesied many evil happenings in this, the 20th century, some of which have already come to pass since Hiroshima. However, not all Nostradamus' predictions dispel gloom and foreboding. He described the harnessing of electricity and subsequent advent of wireless, telecommunications, and satellites with remarkable accuracy for a man living 400 years ago.
When the animal tamed by man begins to speak after great efforts and difficulty, the lightning so harmful to the rod will be taken from the earth and suspended in the air.
200 years later, Benjamin Franklin discovered electricity by means of iron-conducting rods. Of course, such prophecies can generally be twisted, explained away, and dismissed out of hand, but for the fact that many of Nostradamus' prophecies have, over the centuries, already been fulfilled, and have been accurate down to the minutest detail.
By night will come into Varens through the forest two married persons by a circuitous route, and one will be the elected capet. And from this journey will follow tempest and fire and blood and the cutting steel.
Nostradamus prophesied this some 250 years before those actual events occurred in the dawn of the French Revolution. For King Louis, the elected capet, and Marie Antoinette, his queen, were indeed the two married persons involved in the famous escape attempt via the village of Varens by a secret route. And the result of this abortive flight was eventually the terrors of the French Revolution itself, with tempest, fire, blood, and finally, the cutting steel of the guillotine. How could Nostradamus have known of the flight from Varens without the true gift of prophecy? Yet another accurate prophecy concerns the Spanish Armada's defeat by Elizabeth I's navy, and this prophecy was made some 35 years before the event, when England was still one of the lesser powers in Europe.
A great empire will soon be held by England. She will be all-powerful for more than 300 years, and her great armies will control the sea and land.
This is exactly what happened. The British Empire was soon to become the most powerful empire in human history. It endured for over 300 years, and has only gone into decline in this, the 20th century. Not all Nostradamus' predictions for England, however, were as auspicious.
The blood of the just will be demanded of London, burnt by fire in 3 times 20 plus 6.
As we learn from our history books, the Great Fire of London indeed occurred in the year 3 times 20 plus 6. Now let us look at modern history and hear Nostradamus' words on the Second World War and the London Blitz, or at least if not the Blitz, on saturation bombing.
There will be loosed living fire from the sky, and death hidden in globes, horrible, frightful. By night, hostile forces will reduce the city to powder. The fact that it is already on fire, being favorable to the enemy.
Is that a reference to incendiary bombs? And what about Hitler's submarine packs in the North Atlantic, when the Nazis were hunting down Allied convoys?
There, where the Germans thought to breed famine, from there will come supplies, while all the time the eye of the sea watches like a greedy dog.
The Americans, of course, were successful in confounding the German strategies by providing England with the supplies she needed. Does the eye of the sea refer to the periscopes of Hitler's submarines? Without the Americans' help, England would have first starved and secondly been defeated by the Third Reich. However, the outcome was to be as Nostradamus had prophesied.
Those in the islands, long besieged, will take vigorous measures against their enemies. It is those outside who will die of hunger. So great a hunger as there has never before been seen.
Who was this extraordinary man who could prophesy into the future?
My father was Jacques de Nostradamus, and my mother was Renier de Saint-Remy, both of Jewish extraction. I was born at noon on 14th December 1503 and baptized according to the Christian rite. My parents had converted from Judaism before my birth, and the Lord of Heaven be praised for it, for the Inquisition persecuted most fearfully those who followed the old laws of Moses.
Nostradamus was given the name of the Archangel Michael, which after all was a name acceptable to both synagogue and the Church of Rome. All his life, Nostradamus outwardly expressed a faith in Jesus Christ, but in his heart he was still a Jew, and found continued strength and inspiration from his Hebrew inheritance.
In my youth, I was sent to live in house of my grandfather. I was well tutored in the sciences by this gentleman. He taught me Greek, Latin, Hebrew, and allowed me to assist in the preparation of medicines, gathering of the healing herbs, and making of sweet-smelling ointments. But the greatest skills he taught me were those concerned with the celestial sciences, astrology. I had a great passion to understand the stars of the heavens and their divine courses. Thus I learned to pluck herbs under their right aspects and came to understand how the heavens wield such a starry influence upon the destiny of the mortal soul.
As a young man, Nostradamus was sent by his father to the famous Montpellier School of Medicine. As a lad, he was obviously intelligent. He cared for his fellow humans and showed exceptional skills in the medical arts. However, his parents feared for his safety. Even as a young man, Nostradamus was outspoken and voiced his support of the Copernican theory that the world was round. His parents feared retributions against their son from the powerful Inquisition, and his father concluded that the best course was to make Nostradamus rich and respectable as quickly as possible. 3 years later, he graduated with his bachelor's degree, received from the hand of the Bishop of Montpellier himself, and officially his student days were over. However, he quietly studied the celestial sciences and different forms of the occult, in secret, for the rest of his life. Scarcely had he left university when the terror of the Middle Ages descended on Montpellier in the form of the pestilence, the Black Plague. The plague brought with it the stench of thousands dying, the rotting of limbs, and the need of good physicians. No one could deny Nostradamus's courage against the disease. Whilst others fled, he showed courage and humanity by staying behind to help the stricken population.
So in that instant, I clad myself with a shirt of magical juices stained with 7 different colored powders, and over this I placed a leather tunic which was impervious to the passage of tainted air. Then, with a sprig of garlic in my mouth and a sponge tied over my nose, I ventured into the plague-ridden streets and houses, and everywhere I passed I sprinkled a magical powder of my own making above the pathetic heads of those gripped with the fever, and my powder gave them infinite ease.
Whatever the magical powder was, it appears to have been successful, for soon Nostradamus's fame spread across the surrounding countryside. Like the plague itself, he followed the course of the rivers, exercising his skills, all the time gaining admiration for his powers, his courage, and his kindness towards the sick and the poor. So he worked for 4 years, and his fame grew, especially when he cured the bishop of Carcassonne of various disorders, by means of a pomade of his own manufacture, the composition of which is, according to Nostradamus, as follows.
My elixir of life is compounded of the extracts of rare plants, coral, and gold leaf, and rejuvenates all who use it. If the personage is sad or melancholy, then the elixir will make him light and joyful. If he is timid, it makes him audacious. If he is sullen, it renders him affable by changing his qualities. If he is discontented, it makes him sweet and kindly. If his beard is turning gray, it retards his old age by much and preserves the color in spite of the years. It also dispels headaches and constipation and augments the sperm in such an abundance that a man can do whatever he wishes for as long as he likes, without damaging his health. Indeed, my elixir conserves the 4 humors in such symmetry and proportion that if a man had it from birth, he could live forever.
One wonders which of these remarkable qualities recommended itself to the bishop. However, it placed Nostradamus in high favor with the ecclesiastical authorities, important in view of his Jewish background. Nostradamus returned to Montpellier for a short time after the plague abated, but before too long he began to regard his fellow physicians at the university with contempt, and they regarded Nostradamus with suspicion.
They had no imagination, little integrity, and often seemed to despise those whom they had sworn to help.
It was because of these tormentors that one day in 1531, Nostradamus saddled his mule, got together his small package of books and instruments, and left Montpellier forever. For the few years he lived the life of the wandering Jew. Dressed in black scholar's cap and gown, he moved from town to town dispensing medicines and practicing as a physician. However, quite often the gift of prophecy, unwanted and sometimes unheeded, would overcome him.
Being much disturbed by my gift of foresight, I endeavored to keep it hidden, but despite my earnest attempts, it nonetheless broke out from time to time like a spark of fire leaps out from under glowing ashes. And so, occasionally, I would make predictions.
And these predictions invariably came true. His fame grew, and he was considered by many to be a genuine prophet. But there were always the skeptics, such as a certain Seigneur de Florenville, about whom there is an amusing tale. According to writings of the time, Seigneur de Florenville put Nostradamus's powers to the test by asking him to prophesy the fate of 2 pigs in the yard.
Monsieur Nostradamus, do you observe those 2 suckling pigs there in the sty?
The black one and the white one?
Indeed. Now can you prophesy the future of them both?
My pleasure. Both will die after noon, and tonight we will feast upon the black one, whilst a wolf will devour the white one.
Seigneur de Florenville then secretly ordered his cook to slaughter the white pig, dress it, and serve it that night for dinner. The cook immediately carried out his master's instructions and put it on the spit ready to be roasted. That night.
My friend Nostradamus, what think you of the flavor of the white pig?
The flesh of the black pig we eat is indeed tasty.
Ah, so much for your prophecy. The pig we are eating is indeed the white one, for I myself secretly gave order to Jacques, my cook, this morning to slay the white one. Is that not so, Jacques?
However, the trembling cook came forward and related how a pet wolf cub had seized the slaughtered white pig from off the spit whilst his back was turned, and had devoured the meat. And, in an attempt to remedy the omission from his master's dinner table, he had killed and cooked the black pig. So another prophecy came true, and there was one less skeptic. In later years, Nostradamus wrote a warning to skeptics and inept critics of his prophecies.
May those who read this verse think upon it deeply. Let the profane and ignorant herd keep away. Let all astrologers, idiots, and barbarians stay far off, or else enforce the power to alter destiny.
In 1547, at the age of 44 years, Nostradamus wearied of traveling, married, and settled down in the town of Ceylon, where he was to live for the rest of his life.
The first fruits of my settled leisure, apart from completing some pathetic almanacs, was to write my Traité de Faliment, which was largely connected with ointments and face paints, and which I dedicated to our beauteous queen, Catherine de' Medici, as she herself has found that such things add luster to even her radiant complexion.
Other works written by Nostradamus around this time included recipes for preserving jams, and a provoking essay on the preparation of love potions. However, it was not to be that this man of such great powers would live out his days as a quiet and prosperous doctor and writer. Despite the danger of retributions from the Catholic Church and the Inquisition, who in the 16th century were quick to denounce prophecy as heresy and the works of Satan, he commenced work on his now famous book, The Prophecies. In a small room in the attic of his house, he devoured books on magic and the occult, and some say practiced the sorcerer's arts. For several years he kept his writings hidden, for he had foreseen the signal mutations and changes that would come to pass throughout Europe. Bloody civil wars drawing close, murder and violent death of more than one reigning sovereign, and much plague, famine, bloodshed and torment in his own country, France. However, in 1555, encouraged by his faithful assistant, Jean-Aime de Chavigny, he did publish the first volume of the Prophecies, but in a mysterious, obscure style of 4-line quatrains with a polyglot vocabulary of French, Greek, Italian, and Latin. He deliberately confused the time sequence of events to avoid arousing the wrath of the populace and being prosecuted as a magician. 12 volumes were eventually published, and his fame grew throughout Western Europe, which is difficult to understand since none of the prophecies of world events had as yet been fulfilled, and his contemporaries were deliberately misled from understanding the truth. We today can comprehend the truth, and sometimes the terrible truth, of his prophecies. Many quatrains are devoted to Hitler in the Second World War. Does he mention Hitler by name? Fantastic as it may seem.
Beasts wild with hunger will cross the rivers. The greater part of the battlefield will be against Hister. He will drag the leader in a cage of iron when no child of Germany observes the law.
This can only describe the early years of the time when the Germans poured through Europe in a never-ending stream, looting and pillaging, and the French nation fell to the enemy forces.
The French nation will be in great grief. Not bread, salt, wine, nor water, the greater one captured. Hunger, cold, and want.
Even the birth and rise to power of Hitler is mentioned.
In the deepest part of Western Europe, a child will be born of a poor family who by his speech will entice many peoples. His reputation will grow even greater in the kingdom of the East.
The kingdom of the East, Japan, did indeed join Germany as an ally, and this followed on to the attack on Pearl Harbor very early on a misty morning when the naval strength of the USA was devastated.
A naval battle will be overcome at night. Fire in the ruined ships of the West. anger to the vanquished and victory in a mist.
Nostradamus foresaw the tragic Battle of Tobruk.
Tobruk will fear the barbarian fleet for a time. Then, much later, the Western fleet, people, possessions, all will be quite lost. What a deadly combat!
He describes aerial warfare in graphic and vivid detail.
At night, they will think that they have seen the sun. When they see the half-pig man, screams, battle scene fought in the skies, the brute beasts will be heard to speak.
A pilot in an oxygen mask, helmet, and goggles could well, to the 16th century imagination of Nostradamus, look like a half-pig man. Exploding bombs and searchlights would appear as the sun, and the brute beasts being heard to speak could either refer to radio contact between planes or the rattle of machine guns. Remember, this was written 350 years before man ever conquered the skies. Nostradamus predicted a time of peace, plenty, and advancement after the Second World War.
Pestilences extinguished, the world becomes smaller. For a long time, the lands will be inhabited peacefully. People will safely travel through the sky and over the lands and seas. Then wars will start up again.
Air travel has made the world become smaller. Pestilences are becoming extinguished with the discovery of antibiotics and other medical advances. But it is not to last. Nostradamus predicted the coming of the third Antichrist in the 20th century. Who will this be? Or what will this be? Nostradamus believes Napoleon, whom he called the shaven-headed one, and Hitler to have been the first two Antichrists, and makes many cryptic references to the third Antichrist.
The Antichrist very soon annihilates the three. 27 years this war will last. The unbelievers are dead, captive, exiled, with blood and human bodies covering the earth.
In 2 quatrains he even hints at the name of the Antichrist. The names Alus and Mabus appear. As anagrams, no translator has been able to further ascertain the meaning of the words, but the quatrains always signify the appearance of the third and most terrible Antichrist. But how will this terrible, terrible devastation be brought about? The troubles in the Middle East and between the Israeli and Arab nations cause us all to watch with fear and caution, and Nostradamus writes much of these events. The overthrowing of the Shah of Iran by the Ayatollah Khomeini.
Rain, famine, and war will not cease in Persia. Too great a trust will betray the monarch. Those actions started in France will end there.
The Ayatollah lived in France whilst devising his devious strategies to overthrow the Shah. The quatrain ends.
A secret sign for one to be sparing.
And the Ayatollah's regime is certainly Spartan. However, will the Ayatollah's tyranny last? Nostradamus prophesied the creation of Israel, the troubles between Jews and Muslims, and the eventual defeat of the Muslims, the barbarians.
A new law will occupy a new land around Syria, Judea, and Palestine. The great barbarian empire will crumble before the century of the sun is finished.
And we now draw close to the century of the sun, which according to Nostradamus is the 20th century. But other disasters threaten around the time that
the heavens draw near to the balance.
The heavens drew near to the balance in 1982, which means that all planets were in alignment, the first time this has occurred since the birth of Christ. Nostradamus has predicted then a terrible earthquake will destroy the United States of America.
Earth-shaking fire from the center of the earth will cause tremors around the new city. 2 great rocks will war for a long time.
Is this the eruption of the San Andreas Fault? The experts describe the reason for this earthquake zone as being the potential and likelihood of 2 plates of rock in the Earth's surface rubbing against each other and shifting the Earth's surface. The new city. New York would certainly be affected, as would the entire world. Again, New York is mentioned.
In the garden of the world, near the new city, in the road of hollow mountains, it will be seized and plunged in the tank and forced to drink water poisoned with sulfur.
Could New York's water supply become poisoned due to a nuclear leak? Such leak may eventuate from an earthquake, but not necessarily. The 3 Mile Island plant at Harrisburg in Pennsylvania is only 180 miles away, and it happened there in 1979. And how else would a man in the 16th century describe the skyscrapers of New York but as a road of hollow mountains? Nostradamus died in 1566, aged 62. One morning he was found dead on the floor near a bench. He had evidently striven to rise during the night, and the old sick man had fatefully fallen against the bench, as he had predicted.
He will do no more, for he will have gone to God, and in the morning he will be found dead between bed and bench.
He was buried in Salon, and to protect his earthly remains from the vengeance of the populace, once his dreadful prophecies became fulfilled, he left this terrible curse against anyone foolish enough to disturb the bones.
He who opens my monument and does not close it quickly, to him will darkest evil come.
So the prophet died, but as the years have passed, more and more of his prophecies have come true, as the world has lurched from one war-torn crisis to another. Were his gifts superhuman, or did God whisper in his ears a warning to mankind? So, where does this leave us? Well, if he is the genuine prophet, it appears that we have not long to wait before his most horrifying prophecy of all comes to fruition. The end of the world.
In the year 1999 and 7 months, there will come from heaven the great King of Terror, and then will begin the games of death, when those who have entered the tomb will emerge from it, and heretics will be slain, and bloody human bodies and reddened water will hail upon the earth. This I prophesy.
How is the human race to avoid the gloomy future predicted by Nostradamus? Obviously, we must grow away from our present behavior patterns. Be aware of the self-destructive properties of warring nations in this nuclear age. We must strive to embrace a new concept of brotherhood and worldwide peace. As the end of the 20th century approaches, will we be working to attain a retrieval for mankind?
After great misery for mankind, an even greater peace approaches when the great cycle of the centuries is renewed.